My friend, this is now the sixth and final week of this fall series we've been doing called Next Steps Redux. It's all about going deeper in our faith. This has been a great blessing for all of our parishioners, for our whole parish. There have been so many wins that we've celebrated in these 6 weeks of people stepping up into ministry, of our discernment about small groups, and just it's been a great refresher and very energizing and encouraging for all of us here who are leading this parish and helping our parish to reach out, to go out and make disciples. And you know, this is all about the parishioners going deeper in our faith. As we've been saying, parishes are famous for needlessly nagging their parishioners about stuff that ultimately doesn't matter. Really, we needlessly nag about rules, regulations, and fail to really ask anything, at least anything that really has a lasting value for our life or matters for our life. You see, discipleship, following Jesus, is about life change. It's about changing and transforming our life. It's a journey, and like any journey in our life, involves one step at a time. So these steps that we've introduced or reintroduced in our parish are not meant to be obligations. They're not meant to be things that add burden to our lives, but they are events that we encounter Jesus, steps that Jesus calls us to, that are really lifestyle choices, habits of the heart, which we can be transformed and improve our life through God's grace. Well, I'd just like to see how well we know the steps at this point. So if you can tell me what the steps are here. It's an acronym if you don't already know. If you're a visitor here, you won't know these, but our parishioners will know them. So the first S is what? Service. Thank you very much. Service. Christ came not to be served, but to serve, as we just heard in the gospel. That's really his preferred title in the gospel, to be a servant. Then T stands for, thank you, tithing or giving. We talked about that last week. God, by his very nature, is a giver. And when we make that habit of the heart, that choice to intentionally give, we separate the gift from the giver. We honor and glorify and worship the giver instead of honoring and worshiping the gifts, as sometimes we will tend to do. Then E is engage. Engage in small groups. We have a vision here to connect people with one another. Because our faith is personal, it's not private. It's personal. We need others on the journey with us, companions, in order to go further, faster. Then P is practicing prayer and celebrating the sacrament. If we are to converse with God, we're going to learn to be people of prayer, not just to talk with him occasionally, but to listen to his voice speaking to us. And the second S, the final S, is sharing our faith. We are stewards. We are caretakers of the good news, the greatest message there is. We didn't earn it. We can't deserve it in any way, but one thing we can do is share it. That's what we're going to talk about today. You know, like all the other steps, I can give now examples of our parishioners doing them in so many ways. And those examples, those testimonies have been very powerful. It's the same for this step that I'm talking about today, sharing your faith. You know, I think of some parishioners who are neighbors to other parishioners, who have befriended them, who have helped them through crises like the loss of a loved one or a health crisis. And in the course of their friendship and investing in that friendship, they eventually at the right moment invited them back to church. And so I can look at the congregation and see those kind of relationships. It's quite beautiful. I've also seen kids actually who are inspired and growing in faith, and they're inviting their parents back to church. As amazing as that is, I've seen that here. And I've even seen this occasionally, spouses inviting their spouse back to church. Husbands or wives. Maybe that's a little rarer, but I've seen that happen. You know what? This step of sharing our faith, however, can be daunting. It can seem to be difficult for us. This is the step for myself, if I'm honest, is the hardest for me to take. And maybe God is calling me to be more courageous about this one. And I'm a priest. And there's certain reasons why we might find sharing our faith daunting and difficult. One reason is that as Catholics, we were just not brought up to talk about this, sharing our faith. Whether you went to Catholic school or whether you went to CCD, this was just not something that we did. Your family went to church. Maybe your friends went to church in a Catholic school. If you talked about sharing your faith, it was maybe talking about the mission, talking about the foreign missions, and that was something that the so-called professionals did, priests and religious, and it wasn't something around here. So we just don't have that in our background if you were brought up Catholic. And another reason why this is uncomfortable for us to share our faith is that we've seen it done badly. Maybe you've had the experience of someone try to convert you, and at the very least, it's rude. Sometimes it's even offensive. If they go up to your door, knock on your door, or if they go up to you, a stranger, in the airport or in the bus station, sometimes that can seem outright rude. That's happened to me many times. It's just the feeling that this is not something that I do. This is not something that Catholics do. And not only that, I know some people who I knew them and they were trying to convert me, and I knew they really weren't living their religion, their faith. And so that made it that much more hypocritical that they were trying to share their faith with me. And one last reason why this step, sharing our faith, is so hard for us, I think, is because we really don't know how to do it. We think it's something that's really hard or complex, and we don't really have a strategy to do that. Well, to look at this, sharing our faith, and really looking at a motivation at the core for sharing our faith, I'm going to look at the gospel reading we just heard today, and really just one verse from the gospel reading we just heard. So for a little context, we're hearing again from the Gospel of Mark, and Jesus is with his inner circle, the 12 apostles. And as we heard a couple weeks before, they are in some debate and argument here. In this case, two of them come up to Jesus, and they want a piece of Jesus' kingdom. You see, the point is here, the context is here, again, they don't understand what Jesus' mission is all about. They really think, honestly, these young guys, that Jesus is going to be a political ruler. He's going to be a king. And so when James and John, one of those who we named our church after here, these young guys, they come up to him. They want to be at his right and his left so that they can rule alongside with him. They want to be part of that kind of power. So this is sort of like when you are driving your kids to Disney World and you're in the car with them for many, many hours, and one of the kids says, "Mommy, Daddy, can I sit in the front seat?" And you're like, "No, no, no." And then the other kids start yelling at that kid because they're trying to get ahead of the other one. It also could be like at work where employees are trying to fight for that promotion or that project or whatever, and they're fighting amongst one another. And like any good parent, like any good boss or manager, Jesus deals with the problem immediately, this argument among the 12 apostles. So he sits them down, and here's what Mark tells us Jesus says. "You know that those who are recognized as rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones make their authority felt." So, yeah, the disciples know that those pagan rulers, those hated Roman authorities, they exercise their power all the time. And they want to flip the script. They want to lord it over those government authorities, those powers that be. They want to have a piece of that action as kind of revenge to lord it over them. When Jesus becomes a king, it's going to happen. And they're going to be right there with it. But Jesus has something else in mind. He says this, "But it shall not be so among you." Oh, Jesus is going to flip the script on what power and authority and greatness is all about. But it's not what they think. It's not what they understand. Here's what Mark says Jesus is talking about. Rather, whoever wishes to be great among you will be a servant. Whoever wishes to be first among you will be the slave of all. So leadership and authority and power is not being about lording over others, about power over others for yourself, but it's about service to others. It's about service for the other person. And why? Why does Jesus say this? It's because this. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. My friend, this is why Jesus came to this earth. This is why the Son of God came to this earth. Jesus uses often the title, the Son of Man, to describe himself. That suggests what his mission is all about. He did not come to be over others. He came for others, for the human race, and as a ransom for many. That word ransom, you might think of movies or TV shows where there's a kidnapping scenario. Somebody has to pay the ransom to free the hostages, right? We've seen lots of movies and TV shows like that. And in Jesus' time, the word ransom was a little broader meaning than that. It meant to pay off a debt. So if someone was in debt to another person, they had two options. They could either become the servant or the slave of that other person to work off that debt, or someone could pay off the debt. And paying off the debt, if someone else did that, was called paying the ransom. That's what Jesus is talking about here. Now, what is he really, with regard to us, speaking? My friends, Jesus has paid a ransom for the human race. We are all sinners. Every single one of us has fallen short of God's glory. We are all sinners. We all experience sin. And sin is not something that makes us an evil or bad person. It doesn't make us rotten at the core. Sin makes us a slave. That's why you want to do a good thing and you don't do it. That's why you want to avoid that bad thing and you keep on doing it. It's because of sin that you yell at your kids when you don't want to yell at your kids or your grandkids. It's because of sin that you struggle with that overeating habit, or that overspending habit, or that habit of gossiping. It's because of sin that you hurt the people that you love. You know, the whole story of the human race, the whole story of creation, that God created the heavens and the earth good. He created us good. But sometime at the beginning, we turned our backs on God. That story is our story. In your life and my life, there's been events, there have been whole periods in our life where all of us turn our back on God. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. We did it over and over and over again. Sin has made us time and time again slaves. We are enslaved, and because of that, there is a debt that we can't possibly work off. There is a debt that we can't possibly pay, and it's been won for us by the ransom of the cross. Jesus Christ gave his life for us. He ransomed us from slavery out of pure love for you and me. Well, my friends, that is the story of the good news. You see, we did not earn that ransom. There's nothing we can do to earn it. We can't earn it by anything good we do in this life. We didn't deserve it because of our sin. There's only one thing we can do. We can share it. We can share that good news. The word gospel simply means good news. It's good news that we don't have to be slaves to sin. It's good news that even though we will fail and fall and fail and fall over and over again, God will always give us a fresh start. It's good news that God loves you as you are here and now, right now, even as he wants you to grow and even as he wants to challenge you and nourish you to do better. God loves us. You know, if you have good news, think about this in your life. You can't just hold it to yourself. There's one thing you can never do, and that's just keep it to yourself. So it's the couple that just got engaged. You can't just hold that good news to yourself. It's the woman who is pregnant with her first child. You can't just hold that good news to yourself. It's the student who aces the test. You can't just hold that good news to yourself. We have to go out and share. Well, my friend, this could be a life-changing step for you. And again, I come back to the question of how can we do this? How can we make this simple and clear, this step in sharing the good news of our faith? We want to just make a very simple strategy that is for everyone in the parish. And really every Catholic, it's this, two words, invest and invite. Invest and invite. Who's that person you might be thinking of right now? Just keep it at one person. A person at work, a person at school, maybe it's another student, maybe it's someone who is in your family even. Who is that one person who right now is enslaved, who right now needs to hear the good news of Christ's freedom? Who is that person you can invest in? Get to know them better. Talk with them. Have conversations with them and pray for them. Pray for them in your daily prayer. And then when the time comes, and the time will always come, the appropriate time, ask them, invite them. Invite them to come to church. Make it a date. Invite them to church and coffee afterwards, or church and breakfast on Sunday morning. Invest and invite. It's that simple. And we promise as a church here, and this is what we really work for above any other thing, is to make this environment here an irresistible environment, where a person, when they walk in the door, they feel welcome because of the smiling face of the hospitality ministry, where the music speaks to their heart and lifts up their heart to glorify God. It touches their heart, where maybe a word or something that's been said and preached really challenges them to grow and come back the next week. And if you're not part of any of that, make it as simple as this. When a visitor comes, when someone comes for the first time, just smile. Just be a smiling face for that person. Invest and invite. Well, to make this really concrete today, we have, and like we've been doing every single week, this is a very simple step. We're giving out these little magnets. The little magnets just say the church website, the address, phone number, and the Mass time. Well, maybe that one person you're thinking of, you can just hand them one of these magnets, and that can be a seed that's planted in their own discipleship path, and for you. Because it turns out, when we share our faith, our own faith is going to grow to the next step as well. My friend, discipleship, as we close out this series, is not about perfection. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about direction. It's about following the Lord on our own unique path, one day at a time. Today, a little bit more than yesterday, and tomorrow, a little bit more than today. We are caretakers, we are stewards, the greatest news there is. How can we not share it? Amen.